So if you were given the task to change the Canadian fashion industry and you could change a few things about it, what would you change to?
Well, the things I would change, I think, in terms of the Canadian fashion industry is to promote ourselves better. I mean, we're doing an okay job, but I really think we need to take it by the reins and say and be patriotic and not so. Pardon me, excuse me. We're Canadian. Where you see even smaller markets. Like, I mean, there was a few years ago where you had the Belgium 8. Basically, 8 Belgian designers hit Paris, and people were like, "Oh my goodness, what's all this?" I mean, Japan has it, Australia tried to do it. So every country basically has a fashion week, but we're so close to the American border, so people think, "Oh, we still live in igloos and play hockey."
Basically.
But at the same time, we do have a mark. What makes us unique is that everyone from Canada generally came from somewhere else, like their heritage and their parents and stuff, but we have this international feel, but with an American sensibility, like in terms of how we live and do things like that. So I think that's interesting on its own.
Will be changed within the next 5-10 years?
The Canadian fashion industry it's growing quite steadily. I've been designing for about 14 years, and from when I started to now, just our sort of how people perceive us now, and internationally and also nationally, is that there's more awareness now, and
yes.
I think in terms of the growth, it's a slow and steady process. We don't have the infrastructure of Europe or the States, for that matter, and we just have to learn to become a little bit more patriotic to not only to our design, but actors, musicians, and all of that. So I think it'll be slow and steady.
Yeah, it's very true. When was the moment that changed your life and influenced you to become a designer?
For me, becoming a designer, I come from a family of youngest of 6, and fashion was the least thing on the menu to become a designer. Most of my brothers and my sister went into construction, or they were all athletes, except for me and my youngest brother, who happens to be in interior design now. It was actually through television. There was an episode, there used to be a show in the 70s in the early 80s called The Love Boat. And on that show, they had a special, people came as they are, guests. And it was, I believe it was Halston, Calvin Klein, Bob Mackie, Jeffrey Bean, and so then this opened up this world to me that design existed, and they had a fashion show on the boat, and it just looked so glamorous and wonderful. And so that's really, and the next day I started sketching, and it opened up a whole floodgate of ideas because I always had an inkling to draw, but I didn't know how to sort of channel it.
Yes.
And when I found out that there's opportunity to become a designer and you can make a living at it, it was like, oh my goodness, I found my calling.
That's so interesting. It was through a TV show.
Yeah.
Was there any other professions you ever considered before watching the Love Boat show?
In terms of other professions, I mean, I was always a little bit quirky. Like, most people wanted to be a fireman or a teacher. I wanted to be an archaeologist or study languages. And this was at a very early age. So for me, it was always about discovering and learning about something new or building something. In this case, but I always liked the element of animation and drawing.
Yeah.
So, and then I was able to channel it.
Fashion is perfect for that. You studied with Alfred Sung. You practiced with him, I guess. And what was the best moment being with Alfred Sung, and what changed you being with him?
During high school, I was part of the cooperative education placement, and I was able to work with the Alfred Sung, at that time it was called the Monocle Group, for almost over a year. So it was the entire school year. And what I learned about it, this was also at the height of his heyday. Okay. Basically, he was manufacturing and producing quite a bit, and he also had stores at the time. And so I learned a lot of different aspects of it, from the production side as well as the design side. And the one time that was kind of exciting, because I never really met Alfred, so to speak, until I tripped on my way to him, bumped into him on our way to the washroom, because it was a huge factory at the time. And so I was kept, I only had a little stint in the design room, but mostly I was in sort of pattern corrections, production, things like that.
So this is all during high school?
All that for my final year in high school, yeah.
That's very intimidating to be with Alfred Sung during high school. How would you describe him if you had 3 words to describe him?
Simple, clean, elegant.
Simple, clean, elegant. With schools of design or philosophies, are you at a point where you can describe your own fashion design with a philosophy or different schools of design?
For me, in terms of my own philosophy?
Yeah, your own philosophy.
For me, my own philosophy towards design is making something that's both functional and has a little bit of fantasy to it as well, a desire aspect, if you want to say, because right now there's so much clothes out there. There's just tons and tons of clothes from every different price point. And for me, it's just being able to express what I think a woman should wear and be able to also make it desirable for them to want to buy it. Okay. So that comes in the cut, the silhouette, the fabric, color.
Have any schools of design influenced you to go into the path you're in? Basically, have any schools of design changed the way you do design? Have they influenced your own designing patterns and designing styles?
You mean education-wise, or just
education-wise, and also the kind of garments that you make? Is there any design, the school of design that actually influences you to make the clothes the way you make them?
A lot of what I would design is sometimes it's trial and error, really.
Oh, okay.
I know the fundamentals of what they teach us in university and things like that. So what I do is I work with a team that's great, and sometimes you learn the best things through mistakes, because then you just figure out, that's not working, but this is a better way of making it happen. And for me, that's always about evolving the collection. For me, it's not going from one season, we're going to do this, and now next season we're just going to do that. So it's about evolving the silhouette, the style, the look of it.
If you were to visit your home, you would find any collectibles, any sort of paintings or music collections, anything that is more artistic that you collect also?
Well, I'm actually a pack rat, so but an organized pack rat. I'm very in terms of growing up. I guess being the youngest of six, and sort of identifying ourselves in terms of because there were so many of us. Yeah. So we all had our thing, in terms of collecting stuff or making things our own. So if you go to my place, I love music, so I have an extensive music collection. I'm very sentimental with family objects. So things always have their place, whether they're displayed or not. Yeah. I'm constantly collecting mementos here and there and stuff. So and I like mixing sort of like new and things that remind me of home. Okay. So and mixing them together.
And I guess in a way they influence you in your designs, maybe.
Definitely, I think it's taking for me. Good design is mixing old traditional values of good construction and great fabrics and modernizing them with today's silhouettes and styles.
How do you start your design from the idea to the sketching, and how do you complete the whole process?
For me, the process of designing a collection really stems from a bunch of different angles. Sometimes I could be inspired by a place I've traveled or a piece of music I've heard, or it could be something when I'm looking at all the mills from all over the world, and then the story comes through where the fabric is telling me the story. Okay. And that's kind of interesting. So, but generally speaking, what I do is I have something in mind, whether it be a color palette or an idea, and then it's sort of, then I go to market in terms of looking for fabrics, and then all of a sudden a story will be told. Okay. And then I'll start sketching.
And do you have a large group of people working for you to help you design and?
Well, you don't need a lot of people to be effective, and I think we bring in extra people especially when we're around show season and getting the collection out. But I have a small, tight group of like 4 or 5 of us who manage the place on a day-to-day basis.
How do you, how do you make something fashionable and innovative, but at the same time functional and easy for people outside in the streets just to buy and wear and not to be intimidated by it? Because a lot of designers design things that are so elaborate, trying to change the fashion industry, and no one really goes near the stuff because they're too much now, they're too extravagant.
Well, that's the whole idea, especially nowadays. The whole challenge for designers is to make something that is something attractive, something that they want to have, because we don't need more clothes, so we want to buy them. So the whole idea is to make sure that whatever we do has that sense of function and that sort of, I'll get a lot of wear out of that, and sort of I'll treat myself to that, so that there's that perceived value. So basically you can pick up something and whether it be a coat or a dress or something like that, that it still will have value 5 years from now. So that's always how I've always designed my collection, so that it's not, again, this season, it's all about hot pants, we're just going to design a collection of hot pants. So it's sort of taking elements that are of current trend and making them accessible for people.
So would you say that is your most important rule of design?
I think, I'm making clothes. Like, I mean, a lot of people think of it as an art form, and it is of sorts. I don't make clothing that is art to wear. I make clothes that are ready to wear.
Yes.
So the whole idea is trying to take those elements of, personality and uniqueness, but also make them approachable and easy to wear.
You use a lot of different fabrics.
Yes.
And even behind us, there's different fabrics and textures. How do you come up with the fabrics that you use?
For me, I love fabric, and sometimes I get a little too crazy with with all the mixtures, but they all somehow seem to work. In terms of, because I think that's the first thing people are attracted to is either color or pattern or fabric. Then they touch it, and they try it on.
Yeah.
So for me, that's how I shop, and so that's kind of how I approach my collection as well. And I love the idea of mixing stuff together, and sometimes unlike materials, I'm putting an outfit together, whether we're showing it during the ready-to-wear collections and things like that, that I'd put a winter coat over an evening gown or something like that, just an unconventional way. And that's kind of expressing how my philosophy of dressing is.
Yes. We shot for the magazine one of your dresses that's right over there with the feathers.
Right.
How did you go about making that?
Again, it comes down to, I work with a couple of mills overseas,
okay.
Where we create our own fabric sometimes. And so we'll be able to say, I'll be able to design it here. And then we send a spec and we go back and forth. And so a lot of our fabrics, our more interesting fabrics, are a collaborative effort from this part and overseas.
That's very interesting. That's a very beautiful dress. Do you shop the world for fabrics, or do you usually just stay within Canada?
I work with a lot of their agents,
okay.
So because there's so much time that's dedicated to here. So usually some people do go to Paris or
yes.
New York or whatever to shop, but a lot of those people have representatives here. So what I'll do is usually it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to actually see everything, and then by the time all the stuff comes in, then you sort of fill in what's needed, and that's where we design our own stuff.
Okay. And what is your favorite fabric to work with?
I usually prefer working in natural fabrics.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily. Me, it's more about novelty,
okay.
And be able to create
yeah.
new and exciting things.
Can you speak about your Barbie collection?
Sure.
That was very popular. How did that come about?
It was about over a year ago, I guess. Mattel had approached me to talk about this idea that, okay, Barbie's turning 50, and they wanted to do a line of clothes. At first I thought it was for the dolls, and I just thought, okay, whatever. Then they went in further explanation that it was going to be for real women. And to be honest, I scratched my head, and I thought, Barbie clothes for real women. And this was kind of, and then actually I thought about it, and I thought, no, it's actually quite appropriate for now. Many of the women, most, not just men, or not just women, but men also, can know who Barbie is. Yeah. It's one of the most recognizable faces and objects in the world. And I thought, why not create a collection that has that nostalgic value, but also has that sort of newness to it, like that fun flirtiness, but at the same time brings back the person who's looking at it, that nostalgia. Oh my God, I play with Barbies. This is my Barbie dress.
Yeah.
And
it's pink.
And it's pink, and it's black, and it's or it's fun, and it's flirty, and it's cute, but at the same time, it's still modern. But it has a vintage quality to it in terms of brings them back to when they were a little girl.
Yeah,
or
it's playing dress up all over again.
It's playing dress up,
yeah.
but in a modern way. So, and for me, it was the Bay, basically, the Hudson's Bay Company, loved the idea. They're selling it exclusively. And apparently there's a waiting list for the clothes because we had a little shop during Fashion Week, last Fashion Week, which was in March. We had the clothes on display there, and women were coming in wanting the clothes now, or back then. So they created a waiting list. There's over 300 women on that list waiting for these clothes to hit the store.
I'm not surprised. It's something new, like no one's ever had.
Yeah, no, we'll see. I'm just hoping people will understand it. I mean, when you look at the clothing itself, it's not what you would think. Okay, what Barbie's wearing in her little box in in Toys R Us. But I mean, it's real clothes for real women.
What is the most important thing you want women to take away from your clothing?
A sense that they can just try it on, throw it on, and feel good. That's it, with no fuss, no muss. That sort of idea. Because really, the way we dress is a reflection of how we feel that day. And it helps. The whole idea of dressing is to make ourselves feel more confident. And if we feel more confident, we'll actually perform better.
So that's how you would want them to describe it to their friends?
Yes, definitely. Or it's not even a conversation. It's just that they feel better. They don't even have to verse it itself in terms of language.
So we've been noticing a lot of different themes in your fashion shows. 2007, you had the fire pit going.
Yes.
And all the HBC blankets all around. And I'm just wondering, how do you decide what kind of a fashion show you're going to have? Is it based on the fashion line, or is it just based on whatever you feel like that fashion show?
Well, for me, like each season I try to tell a story, especially when you're doing a runway presentation. Fashion Week becomes quite hectic.
Yes, it does.
There's a lot of shows, there's a lot of people showing different ideas, and the whole idea is to be able to tell a story, and that's very important for me if you're doing a collection. It's not just to send clothes down a runway with no thought process behind it. I think the easiest way is to articulate a theme or a concept through storytelling. And so each season we approach a collection, trying to, whether it be through music or sound, all the elements, we basically come up with a concept that's derived from the collection, and we just sort of make that more of an experience. It
becomes more theatrical than just a regular...
Well, we try what we can, like just to make it a little bit more personal for the people who are watching it.
So is that why you think, during L'Oréal Fashion Week, I've noticed that your shows are the most popular and there's a huge crowd all the time just waiting to get in. So I'm wondering if that's the reason why people...
It could be. It could be one of those elements that people come to. It's also sort of an escapism for a lot of people. I mean, the first 2 rows are people, taking notes and, criticizing it and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, for the remainder of the people, I think it's an element of, for inspiration. Like, I mean, for me to watch someone else's show, I want to be inspired.
Yes.
I just don't want to see clothes. I want to see try to get an idea of where they were coming from mentally and inspiration-wise.
Yeah, where they got their ideas from.
Yeah.
So... how do you feel about designing for women? Is that your favorite design aspect? Will you ever go into designing for, I guess we're doing other lines, like shoes or handbags, because right now you're doing a lot of jewelry and women's clothing. And is that your passion?
Well, clothing for me was always the start off. I actually do design a collection of shoes through Town Shoes.
Really?
So we sell that through Town Shoes exclusively. I'm not an engineer, basically, so I don't know how to actually make a shoe, but I will show them the swatches of the current collection. And I tell them the silhouettes and kind of things that I'm looking for in terms of what the collection is about, and they basically design, or they go out and they give me prototypes for me to sort of say, okay, this is what we can do based on your inspiration. And so we do a line of shoes, and I also do a line for the shopping channel as well, which is very moderately priced, easy pieces for women who can't afford the boutique prices or can't afford the department store prices, and it's something completely different from what this is.
We know you to be very innovative, and you're shaping the direction of fashion. Is that your goal, to shape the direction of fashion in a certain way, or just to do what you're passionate about?
For me, it's never been, I guess, a focus to change the world of fashion as we know it. For me, it's to be able to put my signature on what I like to do. My hope is that, yes, people will like it. Do I think, am I an innovator? To a degree. I mean, it's hard for me to say that, when I'm looking at my own stuff and calling it innovative.
Yeah.
But in terms of freshness, if it feels fresh to me, then I'm happy. And then it's, I think it's just being able to fill in the voids of the women in terms of what they're looking for and trying to tap into what they want now. It's like, okay, I know who the customer is who's buying, or I'm pretty familiar with this woman. And it's sort of, okay, what does she need now? Okay, she has that. And she just needs to, take one more step further. And so I'm going step by step with her in terms of the direction of where she wants to go.
So do you feel we're as fashion forward as Europe maybe, or are we limiting ourselves, women in general, in Canada, not to be as fashion forward because we're Canadian and we can't be dressed up all the time?
No, I think Canadian women are actually very cosmopolitan. I mean, it's such a small world now.
Yeah.
And most of the women are, through internet, through magazines, and through television, they're very savvy. The Canadian women dress very well. It's just that there's not a lot of them. I mean, when you think about it, we're a relatively small country.
Yes.
We're a huge country, but a small population country. But most of the women that I know are, whether they're career-driven or, they're a stay-at-home mom or whatever, they know their stuff. They're not afraid of who they are. They're confident women.
So who is your ideal customer?
My ideal customer would be someone, basically who's sure of herself, who knows what she wants, knows what she likes and what she doesn't, and is able to articulate that. When I do trunk shows, for example, I have many women come and say, I love this from that season, or that. She said, I didn't quite get this, and so I didn't buy that. And it's a whole learning experience for me to find out, to get into the minds of these women, to find out what they might want now. So
That's very interesting. So who is your ideal celebrity to dress? If there was one celebrity you wanted to dress really badly.
Oh, ideal celebrity. Well, I mean, I think I'm probably one of a million designers who'd probably want to dress Audrey Hepburn if she was alive. You know,
yes,
I mean, it's, you know, that's just one of those people. I mean, I also like currently Kate Blanchett. You know, I love the way that she's able to just walk on a red carpet at any time and wear whatever she wants, or even Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
And have that sense of, like, they don't care what people think, they just look great. You know, and they, you know, even if the comments are bad, they still look good.
They still look good.
Yeah.
That's true. We're going to go into some very wild questions now. What is your favorite drink?
My favorite drink? Jeez.
Alcoholic or otherwise?
Alcohol. I do like a good champagne, but I also like a good Caesar as well.
Caesar.
So.
All right. We'll bring that in next time around. What is your favorite thing that you enjoy doing when you're not designing?
Spending time with family. I enjoy spending time with family a lot because that's my central. That's being raised in such a large family that you can't help
being
close to them.
Yeah, that's true. And also, what is your definition of beauty?
My definition of beauty would ultimately have to be, again, a strong sense of self, because sometimes, you know, we have people who are, I'd say, quintessential, you know, like idealistically beautiful on the outside, but if they have no sense of who they are, you can see that automatically. And being in the industry that I am in, there is a lot of beautiful people, but sometimes sometimes you'll meet some people who are really quirky looking or unusual, and then but they're so confident about who they are, that they're so interesting, and that's what makes them beautiful.
That's true. What is your next collection going to be like, or any ideas on what to expect from your next collections?
There's a lot. I mean, the fabric's piling up in the back. So basically, we're playing around with different ideas and different themes, but we know there's going to be a little bit more color for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, Barbie, we're limited to a certain amount of colors. But with Signature Collection, I'm exploring a little bit more about the color, more about texture again, not so heavily on the black, because I used to design quite a lot in black, and so I'm trying to get away from that, using that more as an accent as opposed to the base. Do you
feel the multiculturalism in Canada might help?
Oh, definitely. For me, I'm seeing a strong trend towards that sort of international, global feel. Yeah. And that's what I want to convey in the next collection, is that there's more to the world than us. Yes. You know, so that, and that's kind of what I've been. It's funny, I had this conversation with my assistant last week, and just this whole idea of where we're going to take the collection now. Mm-hmm. And I thought it has to have more of an international feel to it, in the sense that it's one of those, it's a culture, but it's not a culture that you can identify. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like a melting pot of a bunch of different cultures mixed into a Canadian sensibility.
Yeah.